Hey there, welcome back to the Breakthrough Creative, where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. I am your host, John McDavitt, and I'm so glad that you are here. We are now into our 20s as far as episode count goes, and I've had the opportunity to speak with a variety of artists and have really enjoyed this adventure so far. And I hope you have too. Today will be no different. We have a really cool guest, Joe Bianco. Joe is an actor who doesn't just act on the stage or on screen. Joe also acts behind a microphone. And a pretty interesting story. I mean, this is his full-time career, and his niche really is as a vocal talent. So I really encourage you to pay attention to how he has crafted his steps in his career. That Joe is really kind of a, roll your sleeves up and grab your lunch pail and get to work kind of a guy, which I think artists, we generally are not stereotyped as pragmatic hard workers. And I just think that is more often than not a lie. So many of the artists that I know who work for themselves, and at least who are successful, are incredibly hard workers and are smart business people. And Joe is a shining example of this. So let me hand it over to Joe and myself. All right, I am here with today's guest, Joe Bianco, who is an actor and a voiceover artist. Is that even right? Are you a voiceover artist? Are you a voice actor? Or are you just an actor?
Probably. The technical term, which I always like retch a little bit, is talent, and I hate it. It is what they call you
Right.
when you're working. When you're doing like it's anything. It's just like it always kind of makes me like a little bit. So yeah, I guess a voice artist. I mean, in video games, you're doing some acting, the real character versus voice announcer. I think voice artist probably covers it the best. Yeah,
That's
a little
awesome.
less pretentious.
So how did you get to that title? Like how did you get to where you are today?
Grew up doing community theater. I always wanted to be a theater actor, and went to Millikan University. Graduated in 2010. Went to Chicago. I always, I don't look LA. I got like resting Disney villain face and all that good stuff. I always knew that if it was going to be an on-camera career, it would have to be a pretty chiseled out or stylized or definite career path with certain types of roles. So I thought, the only way into commercial work is going to be, playing strange character dude on whatever insurance commercial or something where I'm not seen. My college girlfriend at the time, said, your whole life you've been told you got this cool voice, it's unique, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. So she bought me a voiceover class at the Acting Studio Chicago on Hubbard Street. I worked with a couple different people. I would say probably the most influential was a woman named Deb Dotzer. She coaches a lot in Chicago. She's absolutely magnificent. Her best friend was in the show with me, and we had some connections, and we hit it off really well. I asked her to coffee, and she just sort of, in a very genuine and not fluffy, unpretentious way, it was just kind of, here are your options. Here's the pathway. Here's what you're good at. Here's what you should work on. Here's what you should look out for. Good luck. And after so much trying, pinpointing the moment's tough, because it's one of those things where I felt like I was trying to be a voiceover actor so long, and then it was like one, Monday I woke up and I had a bunch of jobs, and I was like, great. And then it's definitely ebbed and flowed, but it's never really stopped since then, which is fantastic. So it's seemingly overnight. It's sort of one of those things where somebody gets on a hit TV show and then the interviewer's like, where have you been the whole time? And they've been like, I've been trying to work, man. You guys just haven't hired me. You're never really sure what the variable is that changes, but you knock on the door long enough, eventually it comes down. And then with the first couple clients, the business practices get better and better. And then, you start holding on to clients, start getting repeat business. So, when you break it down, it's easy to see, but in the moment, it's tough. People are like, how are you doing it? And you're kind of sitting in the moment. You're just kind of like, I don't know, man. I'm holding on and hoping nobody finds out I'm faking it, until the point comes where you start teaching and you're like, oh, I really know what I'm talking about with this stuff. Like I really, people should listen to me.
Are you an Eagles fan at all?
Am I an Eagles? No. I used to watch hockey, but with theater, man, the schedule.
I took you the wrong direction. I'm talking about the band, the Eagles.
Absolutely. I love the Eagles. Yeah.
So there's a great documentary, and it's the Eagles when Hell Freezes Over, because that was their last tour, but it's like a 4-hour documentary. It goes way back to when, right? Yeah, right. As a visual artist, I have all manner of stuff on the side running while I'm working, so I get to listen. Nice. But it was all the way back to when Glenn Fry and I can never remember the drummer's name, and they're playing for Linda Ronstadt way back in the day. And anyway, Joe Walsh, they're interviewing Joe Walsh afterwards. And Joe Walsh, crazy man, guitar player, right? All kinds of demons and addictions, and he's clean and sober. And he says, you look back, and when you're in the midst of all this, it's like none of it makes sense, and it's crazy. And then one day you look back and you go, wow, this all came together like a finely authored book, But when you're in the midst of it, it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, I would agree completely. Not quite to the finally authored book yet, but yeah. I mean, even some of the smaller challenges and the smaller things you come across, and you're like, this can never be. And then sometimes just a couple weeks later, not only can it be, it's happened 2-3 times over. So yeah, it's wild, man. Sometimes it's good writing, sometimes it's bad writing, but it's pretty wild either way.
So let me take you back a little bit then. Let me take it maybe a long way. When did the acting bug hit you?
Oof, what if I was when I was a kid, I was never very good. I was never good at anything but being smart, and being smart's nothing that a kid wants to be good at. It was they had me in like a little gifted program late in my years, but it was nothing I was able to express, and I was very awkward and chubby and had long curly hair. And it's terrible at sports, just garbage at everyone I tried. And my mother went back to work. I was about 4th, 5th grade or something. She went back to work, and the park district where I grew up in had all these camps, these sports camp, like 99 sports camps and then like 3 other art ones. And all the sports camps filled up right away because everyone wants to take a sports camp. And I got dropped in this art one. I think I was one of 6 or 7 boys. I think there were maybe like 40, 50 girls in there. And so, at that time, that's like not a selling point. So I'm like, I'm very much like, oh God, what's going on? And because there were so few males in this camp, they gave me, it was a theater camp, and they let me play the main villain in this show. And I'd counted, I don't do this anymore, but I had like counted the lines. It was like, I don't know, 200 lines. And, I'm like terrified. And I went home and I'm practicing every day it was like a 4-week camp. And by the time the show hit, I didn't only know my lines, I was mouthing the entire play, everybody's line. And it was really fun. It was something my father gave me like a line to improvise that I snuck in a performance, and it got this laugh. And I remember being like, whoa, that was crazy. Again, I was such a rule follower, and and it became this. It was something I was actually good at. You know, I would take a note and I would understand it and I would know how to make the adjustment. And it was for the first time that the adult, the authority figure in the room was looking at me, being like, "Wow, yeah, good job, yeah, you did it, excellent." And that was a brand new sensation that I'd always been envious of. You know, I always wanted to be, you know, other than like solve for X, which was satisfying in its own way, but it didn't bring you much glory. You know, it was fun to have attention. And like so many artists, I think I learned that, well, not just so many artists, so many people, when you're good at a skill, people look at you differently, and you know, all of a sudden, people were friendlier towards me, and you know, I didn't feel like so much of the social outcast, and I was sort of pegged as the actor, and I was able to, you know, people would ask me about movies and about art and about what are cartoons at the time, and it was a way to discover an identity that served me so well, just because going through it, I went from like a really shy and timid person who is very non-confrontational to someone who's very forthwith with, you know, his beliefs, and I think much more eloquent and able to carry on a conversation and meet a stranger and make a friend. And these were all skills that I don't think I would have had without this, at least theater as a hobby.
So acting really at that young age kind of colorized your world, and
Totally.
and it gave you some authority as well, and that's a big thing.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, my father he's a big presence, and he's a large guy, and he was a salesman, a consultant, and all that stuff, and I always envied his ability to tell a story at a party and things like that. And I don't know, but somewhere around high school, I you know, had the realization that all the parties I went to, I was doing the same thing, and it was fun. It was a fun way to sort of, yeah, to realize you don't have to shrink yourself all the time. I've certainly taken it too far in plenty of instances, been a little too bold at times. But I would rather that. I think that those mistakes are easier to correct and easier to learn from.
So when you made the commitment to college and that this is something you're going to pursue, how were your folks with that, by the way?
Good question. I never had stage parents, as we call them. You know, my folks were never the ones who, I was an only child. Look, I was the center of the family, that's for sure. And I was absolutely spoiled to a degree, but in my neighborhood, I would put myself pretty far down on the list of kids who were spoiled, who got extra attention on a relative scale. And I was always very thankful for the fact that, you know, my mother and my father were never the kind of people who, the second I was off stage, it was just praise, praise, praise. You're great. You're the best. You're wonderful. If anything, it was the opposite. And I always joke. I remember doing a show. It was I was in high school or college or something, and it was a 2-show day, and we did the second show. My mom came up to me, and I was exhausted, and I was just so happy to see her. And you know, she came up to me, and she was like, "Hey, are you tired? You look kind of tired up there." And I was like, "Oh, great, it's good to see you too, Mom. Thanks." You know, and we've had an honest relationship about it, and they were very critical. You know, they've told me they spent a lot of nights talking, you know, about like, do you think we should finance our son going to college to study this thing? And even in high school, I took it on myself to reach out to a couple industry professionals to really sort of assess what it means to sustain yourself in this career. And which was a little different back then. There was a lot less stuff online. There was a lot of showing up at places and waiting for auditions. And these were all things that really excited me. And I had, during the summers, you know, I'd started booking, I think I was 18 years old when I booked my first professional show. And, you know, for an 18-year-old to be making like $600 a week or $400 on my mind, I was like blowing my mind. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. So they were encouraging, but there was always something behind it. You know, they saw me working hard. They saw me, you know, plotting a career and being realistic about who I was, and not looking in the mirror going, I'm definitely gonna play Romeo and Aladdin and all that stuff, and sort of being real about what the opportunities were.
And so would you say that came, that reality that was in your head, like looking at things through the lens of reality, did that come from your parents?
Oh yeah. My father and mother were very practical people. And I liked growing up in the suburbs, but there was always, and it certainly wasn't as bad in my neighborhood as other neighborhoods, but there was always a degree of just like, is this it? People just kind of come here to make more money and get fatter, and that's great if that's what you want. But I was hungry for more in life, and they were receptive to that, being like, there might be more opportunities to color your life with different experiences in a city or with these types of careers. It was just there was always the fact of let's be realistic, and when I was growing up, the phrase that my father told me was, you are who you walk with. My friends were such awful influences on me. I was always the best behaved of all my friends. I was one of the only ones who went to college. I never really got into drugs in a serious way. And, that was, my father was just always very, this is, people are going to perceive you if you walk with these people in this way. And it was that sort of honest parenting about stuff that a lot of my other friends' parents weren't telling them, and a lot of mistakes that my friends were being allowed to make. I think there was a lot of trust there. So, when they said, I think you can do this if you really work at it, that was the encouragement I needed, as opposed to, you're great, you're the best, you can do whatever you want to do. It was, we believe you because you work hard. So as long as you continue that, and we're taking this year by year. You go to school, we get your grades back and they're crap, you're on your own from that point on. So it was an ongoing relationship, and it's something that I really believe in too. I think if a parent is willing to put some money forth for an education, there's some rights there. I think they should be involved in the conversation. I don't think it's just, here's $80,000 to go have fun with and try to get a degree with it. So I was always very grateful for the support, and I still am. They're still a big part of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know if I'm spending $80,000 for my kids' education, I'm going to have a say in some of the stuff that's going on. It's like, dude,
the conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I think back to my journey, through after high school, and I would say, not knowing you until we just started talking 20 minutes ago, it sounds like we had a similar background in that. I had supportive parents. They were maybe a little bit more fluff in there, like really, really trying to boost me up. And I tell that because after I was successful, my dad said when I was about 26, boy, you've done really well for yourself. And he's British, like he's from London. So he's really, really chill. And he's like, you've done really well. And I said, thanks, Dad. And he said, no, I'm British. When I say you've done really well, it's like, yes. And then he said, yeah, your mother and I were really worried about you. I was like, wow, I don't know that I needed that, but thank you. But anyway, now I'm going to lose my point because I told a story. I think that there's this romantic, and I mean romantic in the sense of kind of a dreamy, poetic sense of what an artist is, and that you feel it, and you when the muse is on, you're on, and all this and that. And I've very rarely experienced that. And I like what you're saying. I like that there's a practical, an incredibly practical element to it, because you're learning to hone your craft in a way, in a manner that is going to help you to earn money, performing your craft, while whoever's paying you is making money off of you performing your craft. Like it's the way to go if you want to make a living as an artist.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's it's some you said there was interesting. Anybody can book a job, and especially with voiceover particularly. When I teach students and talk to colleges, I go, anyone can get a gig, but it's what you do when you're there, and it's the fact that you're trained and you can make the adjustments. That's going to decide whether you have a career or not, or whether or not people are going to keep bringing you back in. Yeah, that's the key difference. Yeah.
It's a great point. I had a headhunter once who it's the only time I've ever used a headhunter. He always told a bad joke whenever he called me, but I got a job at this toy company. And I guess I was in the process, and he would always say to me, now remember, you don't have the job yet. You don't have the job yet. So you've got to really be good with this. And then when I got the job, he said, remember, it's another 3 months where you're kind of on the clock. You don't have the job yet, really. Well, what I didn't know is that his fee was tied to the 3 months I was there.
You were there.
So he was really working that, right? But I think there's incredible wisdom in the midst of that, people think they've got the gig, and then you start to relax. And once you start to relax, it can be good, but most of the time it's probably going to be bad because you're a little lazy or a little cocky or whatever it is. So
no, absolutely. There's like I said, with voiceover, I knew a guy who took one class and booked a gig, and it went horribly, and it was a national campaign, and he lost it. They paid him for the studio time, but which is a very, money's fantastic in voiceover. It's a great industry. It's great work if you can get it. And he made a decent amount of money for all the stuff that he did in the studio. But when they told him that they weren't going to air it, that's about 90% of that paycheck. And
right.
that was the I'm out of credit card debt. Oh, I can pick a car type money. And he lost it. And then different ad campaign. A friend of mine who booked an ad campaign, it was a huge opportunity, went to several other people in the city, and just got every single perspective of voiceover he could, and coaching and this and that, and really putting his nose to the grindstone and kind of buffing up his skills. And he had enough money to move to LA and get his own studio set up. And it was because that he went in and nailed it, and they went, oh man, you're so great to work with. Let's keep you on. And he was the voice for, it was either Home Depot or Menards or some major, hardware company for over a year, which that's good money. And so the fact that you prep and, so many, I'm sure you've heard this, you talk to a lot of creatives, we create our own luck. It's the more ready you are for an opportunity, it doesn't necessarily matter how often that opportunity comes, as long as you're able to cash in on it when you get it. An opportunity leads to more opportunity. And, these careers, so many of our careers just have a way of dominoing into a way that's really sustainable and sometimes comfortable.
Yes. Luck favors the prepared, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You got to be ready for the opportunity. So you move through Milliken. You're taking some courses in the city. Did you move down to the city after college?
After a year, I had I always tell students and people that I think the hardest year of somebody's life, somebody who maybe goes on the, perhaps more traditional, who knows if that's true anymore, but who used to go on the more traditional path of 4 years high school, 4 years university, and then out to the real world. Because when I was growing up, that was very much the way to do it. And for people who follow that path, I think the first year back is the toughest. I think it's the hardest year because you're used to over 8 years, well, your whole life really, of structure and things laid out for you and objectives being set for you. So I lived with my parents. I took 4 jobs and I knocked out almost all of my student loan debt just because I didn't want to go into the arts with debt. That didn't sound right to me. Something, and it was I almost didn't go to college too. It was I sort of, my folks almost called my bluff on it in that way, except it wasn't a bluff. I sat down with them and said, I want to be an actor. I don't want to go into the world with all this debt, with all this money owed back. If I'm only going to be making $1,000 here, $1,000 there, I think I'd like to skip high school and get practical training. And, they came back with, well, that's a good idea, but, you were your grandmother's favorite grandkid, and she put this money aside. And, what if you borrow from us, and that way your interest doesn't build up? And so again, extremely great hand I was dealt with. And looking back at it, Milliken was the right choice with all my training, and I think the stuff I got there was completely invaluable. But that first year out, it was all work all the time. I think, and I'm there's no way you can say this and have it not sound like an exaggeration, but I swear this is real. This is a real guess. I think I hung out with friends like 4 times that entire calendar year. Truly. And I was just making money and throwing it back at the loans. And then after a year, I moved into what was the nicest garden apartment in Lincoln Park. I was like a stone's throw from the DePaul University. We were paying 2 people paying $900 a month. We thought it was a typo. We got the place before even looking at it. Like, we called her up. We're like, is that the right price? We want it. We'll take it. And so I got to live the first couple of years of Chicago in this absolutely pristine location, living in a place that should have been and was, as soon as we moved out, bulldozed, and a nicer place was built there. But, we were the last ones on the block. Like, we had just found this little diamond in the rough. And so that was the move first. And that was a bunch of part-time jobs. I worked at a luxury dessert shop, which was an interesting experience. And it was what did he call it? He called it European style, when we would like call out the window and be street barking, giving samples. And, he's hired a bunch of actors to be entertaining. So we're all, making Shakespeare, saying monologues, freestyle rapping out this window on Clark Street back when the shop was open. It was absolutely wild, working at stock rooms for retail stores, things like that. And so that kept up. Let's see, I moved when I was 23. That kept up till I was 25. And then a big contract at Chicago Shakespeare Theater, I think, gave me enough momentum and money to quit my day job, as they say in the biz.
Now,
Yeah.
That's the theater at Navy Pier, correct?
Yeah, it's I had a really strong connection with them right out of college. I had a very, very good audition, and they were bringing me in for a lot of stuff. I met a group of guys called the Q Brothers that do hip hop Shakespeare. That was something that I sort of took to really well. And I love hip hop. I love Shakespeare. I never thought those things would be lucrative to my career in any way. But, working on their projects and their shows, I met my wife on their contract. So a lot of, again, not that I didn't create a lot of my own luck, but so many things went my way in those first couple of years early on. And I think it was just the result of, back then you weren't signing up online, just waking up, going to Equity, trying to be seen as much as you possibly can, and squeezing in classes. And I was not going out partying, going to bars, and probably a little too much in the sense that I lost contact with a lot of people who I moved to Chicago with and became friends with. And it's only now in quarantine that we're sort of starting to reconnect. But there's a lot of hard work and sacrifice I think you have to be willing to make as somebody right out of college in a big city trying to get noticed. So I would say in that area, I was pretty successful.
Yeah, sounds like. And yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're the way you're built, your attitude, you're very positive, you're a hard worker. And then once you're in, like, they're going to have to get rid of you. Like they don't have any, they'll have to make up some kind of reason, to get rid of you, because you sound like you'd be really good to work with.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's kind of go back to, you had talked about seeing, like, there's this thread of seeing reality as it is that you seem to possess. And remind me, if you would, I know that you talked about realizing you're probably not going to be the leading romantic guy, right? You got the Disney villain face. But then you talked about the lady that you went and had coffee with. Who was it? She was a teacher of yours?
Yeah,
and you guys went. So which came first? Was it kind of the realization, or was it the lady and having coffee with her?
I think the realization has always been there, and university, my training helped bring it out. We had this incredible class that I am flabbergasted. I don't hear about classes like this when I talk to people about training or programs. And the class was called Performance Problems. And it was a
Wow,
class.
I've never heard of that in my life.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it was a capstone class for us seniors, and we went in and they just picked on you, man, and that was the whole thing. You'd go up and they'd say, "You do this. This is a habit you have. You gotta fix it. You gotta, be aware of it. Pay attention to it. Work on it. The whole point of this piece is for you to work on this habit you have formed." And then the other aspect of that was you would, they'd say, we're going to have a mock audition, and you bring in something. And if I were to bring in Romeo, he'd look at me and go, "You're never going to play this part." Don't,
Wow.
If I'm seeing you and 18-year-olds or people with full heads of hair and strong, more traditional features I'm looking for, this isn't a good piece for you. It doesn't matter how good you do it. It doesn't suit you. It doesn't suit you in the real world, you and your track. And yeah, again, I have yet to hear of anything. Even my conservatory friends, I've yet to hear of a class like this. And it's gone from the guy who taught it, has moved on to a different university. So every time I talk to my alma mater, I'm like, "Did you bring back Performance Problems?" Because that was great. And so that opened up the realization, I think, and allowed me to fix what I could. I could go to the gym. I could maintain a figure that is at least in between average guy and imposing. Those are things that are within my control. I could trim the beard, find different styles of facial hair. I could know how to act really well on camera. For those opportunities. So it became a list of that. And I think by the time I talked to Deb Dotzer, was the woman's name, it was very freeing, because with voiceover, and this isn't a great selling quality, but I have a very versatile voice. And it became something where I went, "Oh, I can be the romantic lead and the villain and the comedic guy all in the same project," and I have. So that was exciting to be realistic, I think, about that, because she was, in the back of my head, I'm always like, I'm so limited by my looks. I'm limited by my looks, and to sit down and hear someone say, "Hey, you're very talented, and you're not going to be limited by your appearance," there was, I think, more free than anything.
Let's circle back, because I really want to talk about Performance Problems a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, totally.
So I know that I've been able to be most successful as an artist because of the criticism I've gotten from others and the critical eye that I've developed over time. And I also know that it is a painful thing, or it can be a painful thing, to really, really take a look at yourself and what your limitations are. And we all want to, look at the stuff that we're really good at, and kind of, maybe that's why we develop bad habits, because it's easy for us. But I think that derails a lot of people in a lot of ways. So I guess I want to just kind of get into there and talk about that experience for you. How did that feel to be you in that class, and how did you get around your ego?
It was the epitome of, and this is a phrase I've heard so much that I can't. I don't know who the original source is to credit to, but it was the epitome of anytime an artist tries a new type of art, your taste exceeds your ability, and it's such a frustrating. It's so frustrating. It's the most frustrating thing in the world to do something, know you are not doing as well as you should be, and to lack the ability to make it better. So to in a lot of ways, without knowing it, college was just teaching us to accept criticism. And my program, the specific professors I had, the specific people in my class, I was so very lucky to have to this day, probably the healthiest sense of competition I've ever encountered with my classmates. And we were all incredibly different performers, musical theater, people who wanted to be leads, people who aspired to be just a chorus background, to people who wanted to be film, Shakespeare, classical, new works. And I don't know if it was because we all wanted something different that the competition stayed healthy, but we were actually the kids in college who would go outside class and sit under the tree and perform monologues for each other and give each other feedback. And you know, it wasn't a choice at the time. It was just, we want to be the best. So I think in a way there was no time for it. It's harder now. it's harder now that you're not in a university, and because you can always fall back on that. People can give you a note and you can say, well, yeah, I'm here to learn. You know, I'm here to get better. So I think it was easier in college to accept, to be dissected, because there was this sort of unspoken idea that, oh, well, when I graduate, I'll be ready. You know, I'll really be out there for it. What's far more frustrating now is if I'm in a rehearsal room or if I'm doing a performance or even in the booth and I can't, my ability's falling a little short that day, and I'm not in a college, you know, and I can't be like, oh, well, you know, I got 3 hours of sleep because I was up doing a project last night or whatever. But I do think that you make it, me and a lot of my other friends who continue with the arts have talked about this, it almost becomes something you crave. You kind of trick your mind into craving criticisms and craving some sort of feedback, because there's nothing more frustrating than doing a job or doing a show or giving a performance and then the feedback being like, great. And you're like, is that, I can't possibly be that good. You know what I mean? Like there's something that could be better about this. And I think, based on all the people I've worked with, there, you know, you can arguably say there are the types of artists who really just want to present what they have and feel good about it, and want to trust the fact that they have all this training and a career, which is all very legitimate stuff to back up your work. And then there are the artists who I think acknowledge they have that as well, but you know, they maybe recognize that this is a unique challenge, or no matter what the project, even if it's just my voice and you're the director, there's still a collaboration here. You know, otherwise I'd just be doing it on my own and sending it to you. So anytime I'm working with somebody, I sort of crave the feedback, or at least, you know, some directors get very sneaky about it and say, you know how to trick an actor to make them think it was their idea. You know, like they'll be like, oh, when you did this, that was great. Let's follow up on your idea, and you know, instead of turning here, turn there, and then you know, the idea is the actor goes, well, yeah, I know, well, I'm brilliant, so let's do that. And I've definitely worked with both, and it's always appreciated, you know, when somebody sort of isn't like, well, that was terrible, try it this way. But you develop a thicker skin, I think. And having done so much experimental things, so many new things, I think doing new works and doing experimental stuff, you have to be so open to just taking a big swing and having it miss completely. That you eventually get comfortable with it, and you start to prefer the other aspect of that is you start to prefer people who work that way. It's much more fun to be across from somebody who's going to make a choice, who's going to, you know, if you're doing a scene and you're holding pistols and they're going to draw the pistol on you in the rehearsral room, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, that was huge, here we are, what are we going to do? And maybe it's a total flop, but at least you explored it and had some fun with it. So the short answer is I've had really good training, but it's training that you got to keep it up. There's always a knee jerk when you get a note or you try something that you are super proud of, and you know, it just doesn't work. There's always that kind of knee-jerk reaction of like, but I know what I'm doing, and it's like, oh yeah, you know what you're doing, but again, this is a collaborative effort, and then I always settle into, well, if we're all approaching this collaboratively, we are going to come up with the best thing together, because the truth of where this thing needs to be very likely lies somewhere within all of our choices.
So it sounds like performance problems thickened your skin, but also put your ego into a healthy paradigm.
It's tricky. It's tricky because you need an ego. I mean, you have to have one to a degree. You have to, especially the bigger the part is, the more demanding. Audio, theater, stage, whatever. If you got to come in and it's like, all right, you have to convey truth and power and fear and all that stuff in this moment. You have to believe you're capable of doing that, all while, not being so full of yourself that you're screaming at the guy with the boom mic and things like that, and while you're still being a decent, pleasant human being to work with. So not impossible. It's nowhere near impossible. And I think if, people slip up every now and then, and as long as they're not huge slip ups, and, you not only apologize, but correct your behavior, it's okay. But, I don't know. Sometimes you hear an actor be like, well, we're playing with Mercury. And it's like, yeah, yes. Sure, if you got to be angry and volatile for the scene and somebody screws up, you might maybe lash out, but be a professional. And
well, and that was the word that came to mind, because I was going to ask you, how difficult can it be because I know it's difficult for visual artists and for musicians, and I know it for actors as well, but it's a different avenue, right? Because you are your canvas, right? How difficult has it been for you to separate your self-esteem, your person, from a character that you're playing while you're applying your skill to satisfy a script, a director, whatever, and keep it professional?
There's always a mix. I think a lot of folks, you develop a vernacular in the theater world of all kinds of terms and things like that. And a lot of people will say there's your actor brain and your character brain. And then I play a lot of villains. So, I'm often the guy in the room with the weapon or the gun or whatever. So, if my character brain goes, oh, hey, this person in the scene has made you angry, you have all the power, you should kill them. My actor brain goes, no, because they have lines in the scene, so you can't, it's really not, a pirate, it's your friend Bill, so you can't do that. But what you can do is you can take that impulse and you can do something mean or threatening to them, or you can act like you're going to. And then that's sort of the mediation between, oh, this is the pure character impulse, and then you manufacturing it into a choice that better serves the story that you're telling or what you're trying to portray there. And there's definitely a road where that could lead to indulgence. I think a lot of times in actor training, they say, and this varies from actor to actor, whether the preference of the actor is to give it the most genuine, real, authentic performance they possibly can, or if they're going to give you the most genuine performance they can while remembering what story they're trying to tell, and having all of those choices serve that ultimate choice of, this is what we want to convey here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for taking the segue over into that. That was fun to go down there. So
sure.
You had mentioned then that you were taking a voiceover class, and there was this person teaching it that you really respected, Deb, and she pulled you aside. You guys went and had coffee, and she obviously saw something in you in regards to voiceover work. And how did that leave you when you had that coffee and you got this person, this mentor of yours, saying, hey, I think you really might want to check this out?
Hopeful, freeing, like I said earlier, just the fact that, maybe I can be that hero voice, or I can have put life into a different body, entirely taller, bigger, with hair, whatever it is. And it was the sort of excitement that I hate to admit this, the sort of excitement that I don't quite feel as much anymore. And maybe the sort of excitement that when I watch really, really good art, what's the latest example? Chernobyl. I watched the show Chernobyl on HBO. I thought it was very moving. I thought it was excellent. I thought every aspect was very masterfully done. And when you encounter something like that, I think you get an energy that goes, oh, you know what? I do know what's good. And I do know what I'm talking about. And it is worth my time to explore these things. And so to say my opinions to somebody who had a respected career in this industry, and for her to say back, yes, or you know, you're correct. That is the right way to think of this, or that is the right way to approach it. It gave me hope, and it silenced a voice in the back of my head that anytime, I mean, like this precarious career, I mean, emotionally, financially, in so many ways, and it satisfied a very practical voice in my head that said, if you get a foot in commercial work in a way that's more reliable than kooky guy at the gas station, whatever, if you can be normal person just vocally, you're going to be able to have an opportunity to start a family or take vacations or, you know, build a Scotch collection or whatever. And you're going to be able to do things that I think there was a small part of my mind that was saying, you've decided to be an artist. A lot of life's luxuries or a lot of life's choices aren't going to be available to you. And in that little moment of, you can have a career in this thing that pays you very well. And to me, that translated to, I can have a normal life. I can go out to a restaurant and order what I want to order. I can, you know, I cannot live this poor artist mantra that I have so many problems with for so many reasons, you know, and I can be a person. I don't have to be ashamed of what I do. I don't have to make the exchange. I want to live my dream. And the exchange is, okay, well, it's for a discounted rate. You know, I get to have both. So, and fortunately it's come to fruition in a lot of ways.
That's awesome. So tell me then, like, what were next steps for you after that conversation? Because now it's like, all right, I've got encouragement. I got to make this real. How'd you make it real?
A way in which I tell people never to do, I made my own voiceover demo, which is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. Because you don't know what's good. You don't. And a lot of times what happens is what happened to me is I went to a friend who was involved in music, and I got these custom tracks and the mixing and the levels, and technically this thing was like flawless and it was beautiful. And I listened to it and going, why aren't I not booking anything? And about a year later, I'd listened to it again for the first time in a couple months. And I went, oh, it's because I'm bad. I'm not doing a good job. And, you know, and then I've remade it. And, you know, since then I've been updating. It's better. I'm very proud of it now. But, you know, it's something I tell people who go, I really want to make a demo and get in the business. I go, great, get a coach, because you're going to save yourself about a calendar year of a learning curve, because you don't know what's good, and they're going to say stuff to you, you know, lift your head up here, stand on your toe, do this thing here, and you're going to have all these little, oh my God, holy shit, it's going to be worth however many, you know, hundreds of dollars sessions, you know, you take for it. So that, but even with that demo though, it was a very different time in voiceover. It was really the Wild West. And I joined in a place where it was still a lot of white guys. You know, so dialects were a big thing for me, and it didn't matter. I would do any dialect, and I would work for whatever political, socio-economical issue. I was just grabbing whatever in the beginning. And right now, I don't do that anymore. I only want to represent. If you're going to hire me, you got to make sure you know I'm a straight white guy living in Chicago. You know, and I have to be comfortable with that as well. And, you know, there's certain companies who I go, I don't necessarily agree with your business practice. And you know, I can afford to skip it now. But in the beginning there, it was just cold calling. There was a website called Voice123 that I've been with forever, which I'll be the first to say I've I've read some of the things their CEO says. I don't think he's the most altruistic guy out there to help the working man. But I use his website to connect with a whole lot of clients. So issues like that, who am I gonna give this person $300-400 to create a profile on their site so I can meet maybe somebody from Pepsi and they'll like me and we can develop a working relationship. And a lot of just setting up a booth and sending out custom auditions. I can't remember what day it was, but I was going over to on a date and I wound up pushing the date like 3 hours back because all these jobs came in, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do all of these. I'm gonna audition for every single one, and I'm gonna book like 6 of them. And I just had this like, I was like, I'm tired of like, messing around. I'm gonna really commit. And I think from that day on, that was the day when I just sort of, really forced myself to sit in the booth 4 to 5, 6 hours a day and treat this more like a job. And the results came back like a job. It's been more steady income ever since.
So do you have an agent or multiple agents or?
Yeah. I started with Big Mouth Chicago. They're great. Kelly and Brooke are the names of the agents there. They're wonderful. And they took me just for voiceover with the demo I had made. And there's a lot of last minute stuff. They're very, they're a great agency and they're very focused on like dollar amount for commercial work, which for me at the time was awesome. And they didn't want me for on camera for obvious reasons. And then the more I worked in theater, I did a show called the Hammer Trinity with a company called the House Theater in Chicago. It was a huge event in the city, and it was a 3-part show, and it was like 9 hours of theater. It was a big thing. And a couple agents saw that show. I switched over to a different agency. I followed one of those agents when she started her own place, and I'm with DVO Chicago. And they've always been a big part. The agent jobs are nice. I would say they come in a little less frequently, but they tend to be bigger paychecks. And you don't have to do any of the negotiating, which is so great. All the rates are pretty well set. But the agents could be the step between you and a bigger client. Like there was Halo, the game for Xbox. They were doing like conventions around the world. And I got to voice a Halo character, like a fighter pilot for these conventions. And that was through the agency. I got hooked up with McDonald's new Hamburger University, where they train all their managers, is in Chicago now in the Loop. And I got hooked up with them. I've done a lot of their training videos. So an agent's a nice way to give you that little bit of like legitimate credibility. And just the fact that they cover the business end is as a freelancer, it's nice to get a break from that every now and then.
But you do then book your own gigs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a lot of regular clients. It's and they range there. It's all over the place. I've worked for. There's some guys in Germany who I always do video games with. They tend to be these like war games. There's Evanston is a suburb of Chicago. I go up there to do a bunch of video games for some guys in Italy and some guys in the U.S. There's a company called Dipsy. That's it's an audio erotica company, and that's all female run. And my wife, I was reading the auditions of that day, and I'm going, I've never done anything like this before. This is wild. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, wow, this is actually a really ethical company. It's really cool. It's run by women. It's aimed for millennials, the representation, all this stuff. And she goes, you got audition. And to this day, they're like one of my absolute best clients. And it's like, it's wild, man.
So you would also mention that, or I think this is what I got from you, is you sit in the booth 4 or 5 hours a day, basically auditioning. Is that right? So how does that work?
Yeah, it's so you wake up, make your coffee. If it's quarantine, I instead of the news, I forego that and throw on an episode of Star Trek. But and then let's get to work. And it's basically you sift through the auditions of the day. You figure out what you've got a chance at. You know, if someone's looking for guy next door, upbeat, full of life, tenor voice, I'm not going to audition for them. You know, we're just going to skip that one. And then you sort of prioritize, usually by dollar amount. You know, let's do the one that pays, you know, $3,000. Let's get that one in first and save the one for $100 for last. And then you go through it, and then you work your gigs in there. I would say with the gigs worked in, that's probably only about 4 or 5 hours a day, which is, it's a good job, man. It's a good gig. Yeah, when nothing's going on, when it's completely dead, I will fill that time with something, whether it's sort of cold calling. I don't think merits too many results these days, but whether it is just some sort of reaching out. If it's, hey, you're a friend of a friend who works in the AV department, it's building the website, stupid content, relevant content, reshaping demos, you know, finding work that's been out there that maybe I, you know, forgotten about or was supposed to come out that month or whatever. And just there are ways to sort of build up and keep busy even when there aren't directly jobs to audition for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great insight. And so I'm assuming that there is, you know, the places to go to find out the auditions and where they're at. And you said there's a money number that comes with them for the budget, and then you can kind of go, okay, I want to hit these first, and you know. Yeah,
and it's controversial. It very much is. I mean, you've got a lot of people who've been doing voiceover for a long time, who are not fans of these pay-to-play things because it's completely turned their industry inside out. And actors too. Actors have just started getting into voiceover. I'll give you like the really condensed version of the speech I give my students, but it's voices used to be pipes, we call them, just pretty good. They sound pleasant, they're good to listen to. Or they would take another turn and they would kind of anthropomorphize the product, and they would say, okay, if Johnny Walker had a voice, what would it sound like? And nobody does that anymore. They say, who's buying it? Who is already purchasing this, or who do we want to purchase it? And then they go, we need to get a voice that sounds like our target audience. So the fact that people don't, you know, there's not so many Charmin Bear, brawny men type reads out there in the world. And we all know the bit, you know, in a world has been done so many times that it's this cultural joke you can make. You know, when you list out side effects at the end of a medication, everyone knows that you talk so fast so nobody can hear. So there are tropes that exist now that didn't before. And because we as consumers turn these tropes, we're so used to them, we kind of turn them off now. Now they're starting to change. Now people are taking the same thing that's worked for so long and going, okay, we don't want somebody who talks like this anymore, because people hear this and they go, I can't trust you. You're a voice. Now we want somebody who talks like this and goes, oh man, I really love drinking coconut water because, like, God damn, I'm so thirsty all the time. There's more credibility to that than if you're thirsty, grab a drink of Kirkland coconut water. Everybody knows that that's a commercial. Everybody knows that guy's getting paid to read it. And I mean, you know, either way, but I think the thought behind it, whether it's true or not, is if the person hears themselves in the commercial, they're going to go, oh man, it's me. I want to buy the thing too. And as an actor, that's been the thing, that when a client knows you can do that, when you can deliver a line in a way that sounds like I'm right next to you, sharing a beer, sitting down, that's going to be the big thing that today really propels your career and gets you work. I would say the three phrases that I see the most in breakdowns today are conversational, non-announcer, it'll literally say non-announcer, and guy next door. And they're really into this cinematic sort of approach.
So the tropes are out and the avatars are in. Customer avatar, right?
Absolutely. Okay. I'm gonna use that. That's really good.
It's yours.
I like that. Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah.
No tropes here. So you have students, you say, so you teach.
Yeah, and I started for kind of selfish reasons. I had this thought of, I don't remember what it was. I actually think it was oddly enough, basketball. I, for some reason, remember this conversation, and I guess it finally came into play. I had no idea why I had this memory of a basketball coach when I was failing miserably at sports in my youth, going, I'm so much better when I play with my friends. And dad is something, an adult going, I'm so much better when I play with my friends because I'm spending all day. I think his son's name was Danny. I don't know why this is so clear. Because I'm teaching Danny the fundamentals all day. And I just remember that point being made and him going like, yeah, all day we're going over dribbles. So when I go dribble, I'm really good at it. And for whatever reason, that conversation has been in my brain for years. And I had the thought, if I start teaching and going over these fundamentals with people, they're going to really become second nature to me. And I'm going to get really good at it. And it was probably a combination of that and people knowing I was working in voiceover going, hey, can I send this audition to you? Do you want to work with me? And I've always had a hand in teaching, be it theater. It's usually some sort of acting thing with like camp counselors going into universities. I love it. I think teaching is very rewarding and fulfilling. I think it's exhausting. I think it's very rewarding and fulfilling. And so it became this beautiful, like symbiotic thing where I would charge what I would consider a fair rate, which is objectively a decent amount of money. I charge $1 a minute and a fee to process and send out your tracks afterwards, which is comparable to anything else in Chicago. And it's just after going over the basics all day with people, I'll jump in the booth as soon as they leave, and I'll audition for my things, and they sound great. And it's a wonderful thing where people are like, aren't you worried about bringing more people into the industry? No, this industry used to be a secret. Even when I started, this was a bit of a secret, and a lot of people didn't really consider it or think about it, or at the very least realize how lucrative it was. And it's not that anymore, especially with the quarantine. Every single agency out there that represents talent is throwing voiceover auditions at their team. So yeah, the fact that I have a weird voice, man. Nobody sounds like me. I'm not worried about bringing other people in. We have different sounds, and there's too many jobs. Back in the day, it was Don LaFontaine was the inner world guy. He did everything because there wasn't that much to do. Voiceover, it's everywhere now. I mean, you can't. Every app is a Kickstarter, has the actual app, has a trailer, as a preview. It's just you can't handicap accessible TV commercial. The stuff that we think of as voiceover, like television commercials, movie trailers, that's maybe 5 to 10% of the work. High school weird things, high school band shows, employee training videos. I could spend the rest of our time listing possible jobs. It's everywhere, and so. I'm not worried about bringing more people into it, because you couldn't, if you had 1,000 voice actors and had them all working 24 hours a day, you'd still have way too many jobs to be filled.
Well, I love how you see it, and I love how you frame it, because it's kind of how I see visual art. When somebody, a stranger, we're American, right? And Americans are always asked, hey, what do you do for a living? If you go to Europe or somewhere else, people don't do that. But, you eventually get talking about what you do for a living. And I learned early on that it was almost more beneficial for me to say, like, to come up with my little elevator pitch, which was essentially, I am a guy who helps 2 or more parties to communicate visually. And then,
good.
And then people would look at me and go, well, what does that mean? And I would ask, well, what do you do? And I'd say, well, I'm a real estate agent. Oh, well, I could help put a flyer together that looks appealing and that communicates exactly what it is that you're going to offer the service to the person that you want to buy your services.
That's slick, man.
And then I'd end up with work. But I could end up with,
slick, yeah.
And I mean, it was just, I was trying to figure out, how can I come up with a way that is it's clear, but it's mysterious, and it keeps the conversation going, and it opens possibilities. And so
I love that.
that's what I did, and it's worked. But that's what I see you doing. It's like, hey, you know, there's voiceover everywhere. We have so much media going on between video games. I love the high school band thing, like our band competition.
There's so many. It's so strange. Every day there's one of them in there. I'm like, who is this money? Where's this coming from?
Yeah. That's so cool. So what would your advice be to the actor, performer, or the complete amateur who's listening to this going, hey, I think I want to do voiceovers. How can I do that?
I think the best advice, like I think I mentioned earlier, and I think since we've started recording too, I've been doing these. I've been doing a couple of these lately with quarantine, and I think the advice I'm settling on is to be honest with yourself and where you are. The biggest thing that I come across is I'll take students. I'm very honest with the people that I see and the people I give feedback to, and I'll tell people who want to work with me, not often, but sometimes I'll be like, hey, I don't think you're to a point where meeting up with somebody like me is going to be beneficial. I think you got to take care of a couple other things first. And the people who have, there have been several people who have gone and done those things and come back to me, and 100% of those people have agents in voiceover. And they are, one of them actually just apparently is booking regularly. And I think it's got a lot to do with, not to sound like the typical Disney wisdom, but you know, if you can be realistic with how many hours you're willing to put into this craft, with the money that you're willing to spend. Here's a good example. I had a student who I told him for about $2,000, you can get really about everything you need to start working from home in a competitive way that's going to get you money to build up a career, to get broadcast quality stuff. I'm giving him this whole pitch, and I broke it down. I did all this research. Here's the equipment. Here's this. And it was a lot of money, especially when you're talking to somebody just out of college. And they went and they thought about it, and they were like, I'll contact you when I get the equipment. And later they had swapped their iPhone like 10 for like an iPhone 11 because they wanted the new one. And I was like, hey, I don't want to coach you anymore. Because there's nothing wrong with people wanting to do this for a hobby. I think more people should engage in arts for a hobby. I think it's a brilliant hobby. But it's something you brought up too, is to rely on the muse. To want to do this and to rely on a muse is just to live in a complete fantasy. And this might be a good way to sort of partner this up. And the other thing I say to students at colleges too, I say the most talented people I know, and I mean this too, the most talented people I know, they've all left this industry, and they've all left it voluntarily. It's because this industry is a lifestyle choice. And that is something that you can't put a dollar amount on. There's no achievement. There's no show you're going to book or contract you're going to get that's going to in some way make up for or alter the fact that, you can't go to a family reunion on weekends because you got an 8-show week. Or, you're going to miss this event that is on a holiday because guess what? You are the holiday. You're on holidays. You got to be the show on the holiday. So the advice would be that any sort of adjustment you make in this career, to see it as failure is only a disservice to yourself. I think a lot of times notoriety and fame can be put on the same level as success in this field. I have friends with a decent amount of notoriety. I have friends with a good amount of fame. And they have different stresses and they have different problems that I'm not envious of. That they worry about different things than I do. I wake up, move a couple feet, go to my booth, cook dinner and sip scotch with my wife and watch Star Trek at night. It's great. I love being a working artist. It's great. There isn't a lot of room for, I don't know, it's a different kind of notoriety. It's a different frame, but just, I think being honest with yourself, with your abilities is going to help you connect with the training you need. And I think being honest with yourself of where you want is going to lead you to a more fulfilling journey in your career, to whatever that may be. Because the only reason people do stuff like this is for the treat to. You know, nobody's out there going, I want to be an actor to get rich. If you do, you got, well, there's other people, other interviews you should listen to about that. But, you know, we do this because the reward is the career, and the reward is the job. And the phrase that I'm sure you've heard before is the work is getting the work, and the work is the reward. So, you know, the work is actually obtaining that job and knowing how to be a good businessman. And then when you get the gig, you get to have so much fun for that hour. For voiceover, maybe it's only an hour. For theater, it could be a whole season, could be a summer for a TV show, it could be a whole 6, it could be whatever. But that's the reward, you know. And if you don't really enjoy, if you can't take that as a reward, and if you see that sort of as an end, or as more of a prize, then I think maybe it might be worth reevaluating where art fits into your life, because it probably fits in a more healthy way.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really good stuff. So, Joe, where can people reach you if they want to learn more?
All the contacts on the website. It's www.actorjoebianco.com. Bianco. That's how you spell Bianco. And then, it's actorjoebianco@gmail.com is the professional email. But yeah, all the new content, all the what's going on is on there. I've got a whole section of just stupid audio to entertain people, and yeah, it's a lot of fun to maintain. But everything sort of goes through there, and you can like me on Facebook now. That way I don't post as much. So now I'm a likable thing. So I don't have to be on that often. So it was a good change.
I like that. That's your autobiography in yours, right? I'm a likable thing.
I'm a likable thing.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned Star Trek. Which series are you on right now?
I'm in the middle of Voyager. I just finished Deep Space Nine for the first time. It was mind blowing. It was great. We got one season left of TNG, but I'm going all at once. I'm like flipping between Enterprise, the original. I'm going back and forth. I think that's the only way to do it, man. I love it. It's a little more chaotic that way. But we'll start getting into. I'm gonna do all the CBS ones. My wife's house sitting, so as soon as she leaves, we're getting that free trial, and we're just burning through them, man. So I can't wait.
Who's your favorite captain?
Oh, see, it's for the longest time I would have said Jean-Luc Picard, and I can't believe I'm saying that. I think it's Janeway.
Kate Mulgrew.
She's got the command, man. She is true to who she is. We'll see. I'm halfway through Voyager. We'll see. I don't know. I love them all, man. I was blown away by Sisko, Avery Brooks. Listening to Avery Brooks in an interview with his like scat jazz talk, and then watching Sisko, I'm like, oh my gosh, you were acting your ass off, man. You were. That was not you at all. And then Kirk's punching his way through everything. They're all winners. It's so hard. I don't know. I'm saying Janeway because I'm watching Voyager now. That's the reason.
I always thought Kate Mulgrew was the strangest choice for a captain, but she seems to work. It works for her. So
they give me hope, man. It's like I said. I used to start the day with the news. I'm like, we'll get back to that.
The news is so much better when it comes in the form of a deep space anomaly, Captain.
Absolutely. Yes. Parables. It's all the same issues now. There's more makeup, you know.
That's it. Cool, man. Hey, thanks so much for being my guest. I really appreciate it.
John, this was really a pleasure, man. It was, and I wanted to say too, I was, did my research, and your art's, it's really stunning, man. I really
thanks, brother.
Yeah, I really enjoy the aesthetic, and I watched your interview with the makeup gal too, and it's this was a really good experience, and I appreciate you taking it so professionally, man. It makes it more fun, you know.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for saying that. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks once again, Joe, for being my guest today. I really appreciate the insight that you brought, and the humility, the honesty, the humor, and boy, what a cool guy. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you apart from this episode. So, some of the things that really hit me today about Joe's interview were that he's a realist. He sees reality clearly. He has a plan for the work that he wants to do and going about getting that work and prepping and preparing for that work. He is a hard worker. He doesn't just sit and wait for things to come to him. He is constantly mining for new work and new opportunities. And man, he found himself a really sweet niche because of it. I wish that I'd had an opportunity somehow to get into his studio just to see what his setup is like and how he goes about his work, but maybe that'll come another day. And, I want to mention as well a couple of the things that came to mind for me. I know that there are a lot of artists out there who are struggling being able to see themselves really improving their work. And Joe said something that I thought was stellar, and it is that there's a point in your growth where your taste exceeds your ability. Your taste exceeds your ability. Now, I think that we have all experienced this, right? We see where we want to go. Maybe we have a particular artist or style that we're looking toward, and we're just not quite there, and we're very down on ourselves. And I would encourage you that if your taste exceeds your ability, if you see where you want to go and you haven't yet gotten there, keep working at it. If you can see it, you have a chance to be able to get to it, as opposed to somebody who just thinks they're good and their taste hasn't exceeded their ability, that they just think, I've made it. That's a problematic place to be. And speaking of problems, I really, really loved that class that Joe shared, performance problems. I thought that was so cool. Let me say it right again. Performance problems, where you would kind of go into this class, and it was just an absolute critique. Which, by the way, critique is not a dirty word. Critique is a great word if you have the right people critiquing you. So critiquing means somebody can say you're great. That's a critique. They could say, boy, I really like the inflection and tone that you used in that particular line that you read. That's a critique. A critique is also, hey, stop doing that thing with your eyes. You always do that. And it just lets us know that it's you. It takes me out of the scene because you're doing that thing with your eyes. That's also a critique. And correction is kind of a hard pill to swallow, right? When we're really trying to improve where we're going, or maybe our egos are a little bit more inflated than they should be, or we've actually been coddled much of our lives, and to hear somebody correct us, it's almost hard to believe they can be right. But there's a softening of our ego that can really be a benefit to our career. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap it up for today. I just thought Joe's information, what he shared, was just so spectacular. And so take what he shared with you and put it into practice, and go make something and go make some money doing what you love, okay? For the Breakthrough Creative, I am John McDavitt, and I'll see you next time.